morning and welcome to the October 3rd, 2011 workshop of the Orlando City Council. Every 10 years, all levels of government undertake the redistricting process as a result of the census to make sure that we have equal representation. We have gone through an extensive process here in the city of Orlando. And at the very core of that is protecting the right to an equal vote. And because of this, we want to have a lot of public input, and we have had a lot of public testimony and input. I'm very proud of our redistricting advisory board members, our city staff, and the Orlando residents who were all part of this successful process. And I want to initially recognize our RAB board members. From District 1, Angel Cologne. Why don't you guys stand and remain standing when I call your name? Angel Cologne. From District 2, John Corbera. From District 3, Cleve Frink. Okay. From District 4, Sarah Kelly. From District 5, Vice Chair Jackie Barr. From District 6, Bishop Alan Wiggins. Didn't I say District 5? Okay, for the record, District 4 was Sarah Kelly, District 5 was Jackie Barr, and District 6 is Bishop Wiggins. And then the mayoral appointments are Chair Wayne Rich, Stephanie Howe, and Tanya Juarez Wilder. Let's give them all a huge hand. And then our city staff, led by Walter Hawkins, and Magic Map Man, Mike Mills. I was instructed to use that. I guess there's something that goes, actually, Walter, they have the hawk here. Did you want me to use that as well? No? Okay. Cindy Sanford, Trinity Tesler, Linda Rhinesmith, Susan Harris, Myra Iftkar, Beverly Willis from the Orange County Supervisor of Elections Office. Thank you all as well. As I mentioned, the RAB did a great job. They created a report that's about as thick as any report I think that we have ever had. I'm going to turn this over to Wayne, but just before I do, wow, Kyle, you did these talking points and didn't put your own name on there. Kyle Shephard. Give Kyle a big hand. And before I turn it over to Wayne, the item that we are going to have at Council Day is simply accepting the work product from the Redistricting Advisory Board. Kyle will go over at the end of the presentation more in depth, Commissioners, if you want to have changes or have something different than what we are presented by our redistricting board, how we will go about doing that, because when you tinker with one line, it has effects, it ripples over to 2 or 3 different places. So we have to go about this in a very meticulous way. And I will be moving the report from the consent agenda to new business, so that if anybody from the public wants to testify today related to this, since it drew quite a bit of attention in the individual district meetings, they'll have an opportunity to testify in front of the City Council as well. With that, Wayne, you can take over, please, and thank you for your work.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Commissioners, I'm delighted to be here this morning to make this presentation to you. I think at the outset you might recall when we were appointed, the question was directed to me, did I want to make any make any comments at that time? And I said, at the conclusion of this process, let's see if you all can thank me. So I have to say this was more of a challenge than I think any of us anticipated. But I want to thank you for appointing a terrific board. Mayor's introduced them, and I could go through and make individual comments about each one of them and the dedication and service that they provided to the City of Orlando and the citizens. So I thank you for that board. It's a terrific group, and I think the product that we're going to discuss this morning is indicative of the amount of work that was presented. So with that, let us proceed. Again, you've introduced the mayor. The mayor's introduced all of our board members and the staff. And I did note that Kyle had ducked out of this thing, so I was going to make sure that he got mentioned for sure, because without Kyle giving us guidance and direction through the process, we may have strayed. And I think it was a credit to him and Mayanne to make sure that we kept within between the legal lines for sure. What were our duties? This is the directions that we were given by this council. We were to gather and study the census data, create maps and materials and share those with the public, to encourage public input, to meet regularly in public session, to take and consider public testimony, and prepare a recommended plan for redistricting, making sure there was contiguous territory, as nearly as equal population as possible, and I will get into that discussion, and to strictly conform to the federal, state, and local law. Again, that's where Kyle came into the picture. These are some of the standards that were put forth that we were directed to adhere to. Create compact districts, and therein lays the challenge. Avoid favoring or disfavoring any political body. That's not really totally apropos here, but it's certainly something that we need to be considered. To draw the district boundaries along streets and natural boundaries. Keep neighborhoods together within a district. Again, a very critical point, as we found out as we proceeded through this. Keep communities of interest together, and that's somewhat difficult to define, but as we went through the process, it became evident there are communities of interest. And to maintain the core of prior districts, that was also a challenge, and I think we rose to that challenge. Our public engagement process, and this is something that I think in the future, for the next 10 years, you need to focus on, but I don't know what kind of media is going to be available the next 10 years. Every time I think they've come up with Twitter and Facebook and all this, what are they going to have 10 years from now? Who knows? To encourage public observation input, to adopt and implement a communication plan, and we'll get to that in just a moment, a schedule of public meetings, hold public hearings in each of the districts. And I will say that we did that, and I want to thank each of you commissioners for attending those meetings, because I think it was helpful. To accept and consider redistricting plans offered by the public. And again, I'll be a little bit more descriptive about that in a moment. And we created a website and an email address, which we did. The communication plan. We did create a website, and we directed our outreach to neighborhood organizations. Again, commissioners, thank you, because we turned to your offices to make sure that when we were in the commission districts, the constituents were notified. We prepared minutes of the meetings almost immediately, and I particularly want to thank Cindy for that. She did a marvelous job. We wound up ordering a case of Excedrin for her, because she did. I mean, when you stop to think about taking input from the public, from the descriptions of things that were going on, the subcommittee meetings, et cetera, and then turning them around and putting them out on the website because we were meeting weekly, it was really a remarkable job, and she's to be commended for that. We had an email address that the staff monitored, and then it was furnished to us for our review. The media was obviously kept informed. We did advertise in the newspapers, as you see, the Orlando Sentinel, the El Sentinel, La Prensa, and the Orlando Times, and we sent out weekly email blasts. So in terms of communicating, we did that. Subcommittees. This is something that, as chair, I felt was an important ingredient on how we're going to approach this. We came into this process with no preconceived notions. I think I can honestly say that for all the board members. In addition, I thought it was important that the committee address drawing of maps. And by that I mean it needs to be our product. So we did not have staff-driven material placed before us. So what we did, I broke down the board into these subcommittees, and there was some rhyme and reason behind that. As you see, Subcommittee 1 was Angel Colon and John Cabrera. That's Districts 1 and 2, and then I put a mayoral appointee on that subcommittee. The same thing is true with Subcommittee 2. Districts 3 and 4, and Tanya Juarez is the mayoral appointee, and Subcommittee 3 was myself, Jacqueline Barr, and Bishop Wiggins, representing Commission Districts 5 and 6. Now, why that kind of configuration? It's where they join. So one district needs to be able to take a look at the others. But in doing that, the rationale behind it was that we would have an opportunity for each of these subcommittees not only to address the interest of their particular district commissioner, but in doing so, we're forced to address all the others. So I believe that process worked quite well. And again, as we go through this, you'll get a better feel for it. The redistricting software was marvelous. There is no question about it. And as you mentioned, Magic Mike he gets the award for patience. It is incredible how patient he was as he worked through this process, not only with us as committee members or subcommittee members and board members, but with the public. He sat down and made sure everybody understood what we were dealing with. And we had an example at each district meeting. Mike did a very brief presentation so the public could understand what happens when you start moving things around. But the advancement of the software is really remarkable, and we thank you for making the effort of making sure we had that as a tool. And this, what I've just said, the software did a really remarkable job, and I've just made these comments. Public hearings. We had over a dozen board meetings. 6 of them were in each district. We had hundreds of citizens attend, and we received invaluable input from the public. Okay, here's the nuts and bolts. The city population, as of the time of the 2010 census, 238,916. Therefore, by division, we have an ideal district of 39,819, and we will be operating with a plus or minus deviation of 5%, giving us a range of 37,828 to 41,810. This is what it looks like, the population based on the census in each district at the time of the census. And as you can see, in the red, the deviation from the ideal is what leaps out at us. This is the challenge that we were faced with when we took on this task. Obviously, District 1, Commissioner Diamond, had 33% more than the ideal number. So we knew that he was going to have to lose some. And then District 2 was low by 24%. District 3 was pretty much already on target. District 4, Commissioner Sheehan, had about 12% over the ideal. District 5, 17% below the ideal. And District 6, approximately the right amount of number, less than 0.5%. This shows you the breakdown by race and ethnicity, and you'll notice that we had some significant increase in the Hispanic ethnic group, and the black population increased by 30%, the white population by 20%. If I'm going too fast, raise your hand, because I know I've been working with this so much that it's almost, I don't want to speed through it, so, you know. We had a 12-week schedule. We actually started after Orange County but finished before them. We had 14 board meetings, and in addition there were 11 subcommittee meetings. where even and citizens, these were notice meetings. Citizens were permitted to attend those subcommittee meetings. Over 300 hours of board time was involved in this. There were 66 different versions of maps that were created, 22 of which were created by the public, 14 by the board, and some 30 by the subcommittees. Not all of those made it out of the meeting with Mike, but that's the volume of maps that we considered. So I can safely say there is not one person on this board that did not take this challenge lightly. And there is no question that there was very significant public input that addressed these issues. Of all those maps, 21 were considered by the board. And by that I mean they were brought, they were discussed, and then we would accept those for further consideration and deliberation, trying to winnow the process down. 7 of those were created by the public and 7 by the subcommittee. So as you can see, as we proceeded through the process, we were able to bring the number of maps down to a manageable number and then address those, and we'll get to that in just a moment. Obviously, the public was a vital component of this. They were very interested in keeping their neighborhoods together. They were very interested in keeping the minority-majority districts intact, and they had we had numerous comments on voiced by neighborhoods to remain within certain commission districts. Very strong indications. Now, why Jell-O effect on this bullet point? I probably use this, I may have overused it, but it gives the public a very good description of what we're having to work with. And that's if you have a handful of Jell-O and you squeeze it, as you change something, other parts squirt out. So it's not as easy as it might seem. Well, why don't you just kind of squeeze it all together? It didn't work that way. So that gives at least a visual of what we were dealing with. We had uneven distribution of population. We had to balance disparate interest, and we also had to be concerned about projected growth, because obviously District 1, with the areas that it has available to it for future growth, is going to continue to do that, at least in the near future. At the end of the day, after a lot of discussion, we have a unanimous approval of a single recommended plan for redistricting. And the recommended plan, in our view, keeps existing boundaries largely intact. Again, going back to the standards and the charge from this commission. Here's the recommended plan, and it's over here on the board as well. And as you can see, I know, relatively speaking, it doesn't look compact, but they are compact districts. And I think that was one of the main overriding, guiding principles that we tried to work with, is at the end of the day, try and make them as compact as possible. And here's how it breaks down. Again, you can see that in District 1, it went from a census population of 52,000 down to 38, which has a deviation of about 4.39 from what is the optimum amount. And then in each of the other districts, District 2, the census population of 30, and the recommended plan has 38,848, which is a 2% deviation. District 3, the population was 39,003. The recommended plan has 39,455. Again, a fractional difference. District 4 had to lose, and it has an ideal plan, recommended plan number of 41,393. Still a little high, but within tolerance of acceptable deviation. District 5 had a 32,000 census population is now recommended at 38,622, with it, which is just about almost 2% less from a deviation perspective. District 6, 39,000 according to the population, and still winds up being at 41. So we allowed for District 1 to grow, and that was really one of our intentions as we went through this process and recommended this plan. Here's the by district breakdown. That's what District 1 is recommended to look like. And here are the numbers. As you can see, the distinction between the 2000 and the 2010, you can see how much it grew. The recommended plan shows it is being reduced by about 28% from the 2010 census. And then we have the breakdown by race and ethnicity. District 2, that's the proposed district. The dashed lines in there that I might point out are the existing district lines. So you can see where they have changed, and the color distinction obviously is the various districts as they were color-coded. The color coding, by the way, remained consistent throughout the entire process. We didn't switch colors on people as we went through the process. And then numerically, it had 2000, it had 31,256, and in 2010, 30,033. So it actually grew by 29% under the proposed plan. And then the breakdown with white, black, and ethnicity. District 3 really maintained as much as possible its current district lines, and very little change in District 3. And as you can see, the numbers reflect that. District 4, again, you can see where we shifted some of the population outside of the existing District 4. And then in doing so, from the previous district lines down in the southwest part of the district, it retracted. Here again, we had a population growth. The plan, again, we reduced it to 41,537, or about a almost 7% change. And again, you can see the breakdown as to the race and the ethnicity. District 5, as you can see from the borders, we still were able to maintain, relatively speaking, the existing district lines. We had to intrude into District 6 in order to pick up the appropriate balance, but for the most part, the integrity of District 5 was maintained. And here, the numbers again, from 32,000, roughly the same number in 2010, it now has increased to 39,000, about a 20% change, and then the breakdown on the race and the ethnicity. District 6, as you can see, the district shifted. A lot of discussion among the neighborhoods, particularly in the Metro West area. Again, maintaining the integrity of the existing district was important, and attempting to achieve the interest of the communities that came forward and testified at the meeting or sent in emails or petitions. The breakdown here wound up with about a 5% change in our plan over the 2010 number. And the breakdown here on race and ethnicity, as you can see, the white population and the black population are fairly close, but that tends to reflect what's happening district-wide. And there was just a minor decrease in the black numbers under our plan. Some of the lessons that we learned. Direct, outreach to the neighborhoods, again, in many instances through your offices, was very important, and I think that's something that needs to be encouraged 10 years from now. We had map comment forms, and they were well received by the citizens because not everybody likes to come up and testify. So we had the opportunity for the public to make comments in a written form, and, I think if you want some light reading, you'll find a lot of that here and see what your constituents say. And this is the type of thing that with Cindy and the staff's help, we got that information almost immediately. And this was the type of thing that we took into our deliberations as we went through this process. Newspaper advertising, I think we were pretty well convinced that it was not necessarily cost effective in this day of the various alternatives on media. Probably don't want to go through that cost again. It probably needs to be done for legal purposes to a certain level, but I wouldn't go overboard with it. In terms of strategy, and as we looked at these districts, there's probably some areas that you might want to round off some of your borders through annexation, and it may be that you want to attempt to eliminate some enclaves, and in particular in districts 5 and 6. As I mentioned earlier up, the formation of the subcommittees provided us an opportunity for both formal and informal ways to work with the constituents. As I say, it forced the abutting district reps to work together. And I think they worked together quite well. We had, all of our meetings were very civil. We had good debate. I think everybody was respected, and their information that they provided was well received by everybody. In the future, as the downtown core continues to consolidate, there probably should be some emphasis on making sure they're involved in the process. We found that many of the citizens that did participate were from organized community organizations, primarily homeowners associations, which tends to mean that the multifamily and apartment dwellers may not be participating to the degree that they should. So involvement in the multifamily dwellers, I think, in the process, or at least making it available to them, would be worthwhile consideration. That concludes my portion of this report. I've asked Kyle to step forward and talk about some of the legal side of this. As I said at the outset, Kyle kept us on the rails, and if we looked like we were headed to a ditch, he would bring us back into focus. Am I falling apart here? Yeah. Okay. Bring us back into focus. I think it goes without saying, and again, I want to throw out kudos to Mike and to Walter and to everybody on staff, Linda. Without their support and continued involvement in this process, we would not have been able to achieve what I believe we've achieved in the time that we needed to do it. So again, I want to thank you for appointing some terrific people, and I'm going to let Kyle address some of the legal points, and then we'll be happy to take commission questions. Kyle?
Good morning, Mayor and City Commissioners. Kyle Shephard, Assistant City Attorney. I want to go over just a couple quick slides with you. I want to give you a quick endorsement of this plan from the City Attorney's Office. When we started this process back in June, we gave a presentation to you covering many of the legal points that impact redistricting. Redistricting is one of those processes that is inherently heavy with the law. There are dozens and dozens, probably hundreds of federal and state cases that impact how you go about doing redistricting. And we did our very best in the City Attorney's Office to go through those cases, and to compare the different recommended plans with the cases to ensure that whatever plan was recommended to you, we could fully endorse as one that would be sustained in all likelihood by the courts. You can never predict what a court will do with a plan, but we believe based on existing law, this is a good plan. I want to run through just a couple of the points that we were very careful to consider. There were, as you heard, about 66 or so plans that were produced. Each of those plans that were produced also with a detailed demographic table so that we could go through each of those plans. And we did our very best to go through each of them. And then as the board was presented with those plans, to comment on those. And there were times when we had to have uncomfortable conversations about some of the plans that were presented by the subcommittees and by members of the public because we didn't believe that courts would sustain those plans. The vast majority of the plans, though, were good plans. First and foremost, when you are doing redistricting, the quote that's up here on the screen right now is the one that you have to focus in on. More than anything else, the most important thing that you do during redistricting is to make sure that people's vote in District 6 is as equal as someone's vote in District 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's the most important thing, that everybody has one person, one vote. So you remember we talked about this, and the courts have given a little bit of guidance over the years about how close you have to get from one district to the other to the ideal district population. Remember that ideal population was 39,800 or so people. If you deviate up from that or down from that, you shouldn't deviate more than 5% up and 5% down for a total deviation of 10%. Ideally, you'll get closer to 0. This board went through the process of justifying the deviation to the extent that it was a little bit above 0. So one of the things the board says is if you look at the deviation of District 1, it is small by about 4.9 or so percent. What the board said here is that every reasonable person will tell you that the growth over the next 10 years in our city is likely to occur where it occurred in the last 10 years, which is in District 1. And so let's intentionally begin the decade by undersizing District 1. So what we said is that if you take out the deviation from District 1 for that very good and justifiable reason and look at the deviation after that, you see it's closer to 6%. We believe that that is justified by the effort by this board to keep neighborhoods together and to use sensible streets and natural boundaries as the natural boundaries between the districts. So as far as the deviation goes, we believe that this is a good and sustainable plan. We also believe the plan comports with the guidelines that you set down, the 4 or 5 important guidelines, such as keeping compact districts. If you look at our city map, it doesn't look compact sometimes because the exterior boundaries of the city of Orlando are a little bit jagged. But when you correct for that, the districts are very compact when you compare them, for example, to state legislative districts or the U.S. congressional districts. The board tried, for example, to reduce the one sort of outlier in that regard, which is the western appendage of District 4. They made a real effort at that and were able to reduce it some, but we're not able to completely eliminate it because of the massive population that has grown in that area over the past 10 years. On the other hand, District 1 under this recommended plan is less sprawling than it was before as the population has grown in the southeast sector. This plan is able to pull District 1 towards that population center in the southeast. Each of the districts is contiguous. We've blown up the map, looked at it very carefully. The one little area you may have a question about is the Cimarron Boulevard Isthmus down there just south of Hazeltine or Lee Vista Boulevard. It is, in fact, contiguous with District 1 being on the west side of the Cimarron Boulevard right-of-way and District 2 on the east side of the Cimarron Boulevard right-of-way. One of the most common things you heard, and you see this in the report, is that more than anything else, the people of the city of Orlando want to see their neighborhoods kept within a single district. And there's a variety of reasons for that. This plan does a very good job of doing that. You can't keep every single neighborhood together within a common district, but this plan does a very good job of keeping the vast majority of your neighborhoods together within just one district. Communities of interest are also largely kept within one district. The board took a lot of testimony on what a community of interest is, and we heard a lot of them. Historic preservation districts was a big one. And so this plan strives to keep that community of interest together. Certain commercial corridors were viewed as communities of common interest, and they were, to the extent possible, kept together within a single district. The board never considered party identification data, and so they were not able to favor or disfavor any political party. The board also took lots of comment on what is considered a core area of each of your districts. So the board asked members when we went out into the district, what neighborhoods do you consider an essential component of District 5, of District 2, of District 3, or whatever? And members of the public would say, look, we consider this neighborhood or this street a core component of the identity of District whatever. And the board strove to keep those together. Finally and importantly, we went through a lot of demographic information to ensure that this plan would comport with the very exacting requirements of the 14th Amendment, which requires the equal protection of the laws, and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 as it has been amended over the past 45 years. We believe this plan meets the requirements of both of those laws. Keep in mind that the 14th Amendment has been interpreted in the past decade to prohibit the consideration of race as the primary motivating factor behind redistricting. On the other hand, there's a countervailing requirement of the Voting Rights Act that you not do something that has the practical effect of prohibiting minority groups from electing representatives of their choice. On the east side of town, for the first time in our city's history, we have a district that will be predominantly Hispanic. District number 2 will be over 50% Hispanic. 10 years ago, that number was not reached. It was in the lower 40s. District 2, however, is not packed with Hispanic communities to the detriment of District 1. Okay. On the west side of town, District 5, in proportional terms, loses about 2% of the African American population in District number 5, bringing it just below 65%. In other words, District number 5, as a proportion of its total population, has just a few fewer African Americans in 5. That 65% number is an important number in the law. Anything above 65% has generally been viewed as an effort to pack minority communities within one particular district at the expense of allowing them the opportunity to elect representatives of their choice in another district. So we feel very good about that slight diminution that it does not maintain a number above 65%. District number 6 was a challenge. This board had to work very, very, very hard because of changing demographics in District 6 to maintain a robust plurality of African Americans in District number 6. District 6 no longer has a majority of African Americans as it did at the beginning of 2000 under the old 2000 plan, but it does maintain a plurality of African Americans in District 6 when compared to other racial groups. In other words, District 6 is still a minority-majority district when adding all minority groups together, including the other race, which is something that has grown rapidly in District number 6. With that, Mayor, those are the important components, legal components that we looked at.
Hey, Kyle, since everybody might not know what the other race is, you want to just...
Sure. On your census form this year, question number 5 or 6 was, are you of Hispanic ethnicity or not? So that was number 1. Hispanic is not considered a racial group by the Census Bureau. Now, to confuse matters, it is considered a racial group when you go to register to vote in the state of Florida. Okay? So if you're ever trying to compare and contrast census numbers with voter registration numbers, they'll never match here for the state of Florida. The next question was, what racial background do you identify yourself as? Okay, it's self-identification, white, black, Asian, Native American, and other. Other is something that has grown rapidly in our country because a lot of folks increasingly don't identify themselves as falling discreetly within one of those categories. And so if you're of multiple races or you view yourself as some other racial category that was not captured, Torres Strait Islander, for example, you would tick on that other. Okay? So it can be a combination of things. A lot of those folks are mixed race folks. Okay? So of African American heritage plus Asian heritage or what have you. Okay, let's review next steps real quick. Today, the Redistricting Advisory Board is presenting you their final report. That's this. In that final report is their unanimously approved recommended plan of redistricting. This afternoon, we ask that you accept that report from the board, and with that, you'll be accepting the recommended plan of redistricting. We also recommend that you conduct, Mayor, if you wish, a public hearing this afternoon on this recommended plan. Hopefully you'll get the opportunity to hear some of the comments that we heard over the last 3 or 4 months from members of the public. Then in 2 weeks, we will take this plan if you accept it today, and we will reduce it to writing into an ordinance that will be brought for first reading and hearing on October 17th. The plan for redistricting is not effective until you amend the city charter, Chapter 2 of the city charter, Section 4-1, to have a meets and bounds description of this map. The map is easy when you graphically depict it, but right now the city surveyor is very quickly working to reduce this to a meets and bounds description. We will bring that back to you for first reading on October 17th, and then for second reading and adoption on October 31st. The plan right now we are proposing would be effective, the ordinance would be effective on November 14th, Monday midnight, November 14th. So you would become the commissioner of your newly contoured district on November 14th. We're still thinking about the effective date there, but that's our current proposal. The plan has to be effective by law before the beginning of December, and the reason is that you have to have it effective at least 4 months prior to the city's next regular election, which will occur on April 3rd. By the way, speaking of the city's municipal election, you'll notice that just last week the State of Florida's Presidential Preference Primary State Selection Committee selected the last day in January 31st, for the presidential preference primary. So in hindsight, you did the right thing by selecting April 3rd for the city's regular municipal election. We would not have nearly enough time to have had a plan in place because of what the legislature, the date selection committee, when they set the PPP, the presidential preference primary. Now, the plan that's presented before you is unanimously recommended to you from the Redistricting Advisory Board. But ultimately, you're responsible for this plan. Staff recommends this plan. We believe it's a good plan, it's a legally sound plan, and it's a sensible plan based on the guidelines you gave. However, if any of you would like to see an amendment to this plan, we have to have a way of analyzing that proposed plan amendment prior to first reading and prior to adoption so that we can advise you on whether or not it meets the strict requirements of law. Therefore, what we ask that you do is, if you would like to see an amendment, is that you let us know by the end of this week. We will run that amendment through the software and let you know of the consequences. Sometimes the consequences are not quite what you might think. Okay, you might think moving neighborhood A to district B will do something to a number, and it actually does something quite different. So we need to let you know what the consequences would be and let you make a decision about whether you want to proceed with proposing that amendment at first reading. At first reading, we ask that you move approval of the plan as submitted, and then if you would still like to go forward with a proposed amendment, to move that amendment as an amendment to the plan. If it passes by a majority vote of this board, we would bring back an amended city ordinance at the second reading and second hearing on October 31st. That is our proposed procedure going forward.
Does anybody have questions on the process? I just didn't want us to get to first reading and have people giving us hand-drawn maps and trying to determine whether they fit within the deviations and anything else. Everybody good with working? If you're going to propose a modification, do it this week. Okay.
Staff, Linda, Walter, I, Cindy, will all be available and give you as much time as necessary this week to help you work through that if that's what you need to do. Finally, Mayor, thank you so much. You and Commissioner Ings, Commissioner Lynham, Commissioner Sheehan, Commissioner Stewart, Commissioner Ortiz, Commissioner Diamond, you all spent a lot of time coming to a lot of these meetings, and it meant a lot to city staff. We really appreciate your support. Thank you, man, for this. This was a neat opportunity for a municipal lawyer. There is no neater opportunity than to work on a redistricting. It's trying at times. Sometimes I felt like I was standing at the wrong place when you pointed at me, but I really, really appreciate it. One final item, Mayor. There's a lot of talk today in our society about our civic dialogue being broken. We can't talk to one another. We can't discuss our civic affairs. If you believe that, you did not come to one of our district meetings, because what you saw at those district meetings were folks from all around Orlando coming out, having a robust but very civil exercise in governing themselves, and it was really, really inspiring, I think, to all of us. All right. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Kyle. Are there questions or comments either for Kyle or for Wayne? Anybody? Okay, we will have a public hearing this afternoon on the plan, and then we'll bring it back for first reading 2 weeks from now. I guess it's 2 weeks from now. Okay, then Commissioner Lynham.
I was just waiting to see whether anybody else was going to say anything. I know we're going to talk about that this afternoon, but I just cannot allow this workshop to go by without saying another special thanks to my representative for District 5, who just was phenomenal. And with the support of Wayne, I want to express my deepest appreciation, and to, of course, Bishop Wiggins, and to all the group. But you are my subcommittee, and I'm just very, very thankful for the work you provided us.
Actually, as I look at our committee, that represents the diversity of the city of Orlando in terms of ethnicity, age group, sex, female, gender. Okay. So I know that there were a lot of hours that were spent, so we don't have any compensation other than to say thank you for a job well done.
Are they coming back this afternoon?
Are you guys coming back this afternoon?
No.
They're saying, oh, I hope not. Commissioner Ortiz, Commissioner Sheen, Commissioner Stewart.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say that you guys have really raised the bar on doing this. So I think you all deserve not only a huge round of applause, but a big thank you from every citizen in the city of Orlando.
Commissioner Sheehan.
Whenever you have to lose, it's very difficult because they weren't numbers to me, they were people. And they were people that I love and know and have worked with a long time. And I want to thank you for your sensitivity. And I want to thank Lynn Poole because she was on the chopping block. And Dover Shores West kept coming again and again and again. And Sarah Kelly, who had the unenviable position of being in the middle. When you're in the middle child, everybody picks on you. And when I had to lose, it was tough. So I want to thank you, Sarah, for being in a tough situation because you never know where we're going to grow. And it was tough because a lot of folks didn't want to lose me. And, I didn't want to lose them either. But thank you for doing a difficult task. And thank you for the Redistricting Advisory Board Committee for being sensitive. Thank you.
Commissioner Stewart.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you very much. We won't get a chance to see you for a couple of weeks, and I want to tell you how much I appreciate it. I also want to extend Cleve Frink's sympathies for not being here, because he wanted to be here. He got called out to a shoot last Wednesday and had to leave on Saturday, so he hopes to be back in a couple of weeks. So y'all have done a great job, done yeoman's work. And I will tell you that the people I've talked to in other jurisdictions have held up you as a committee about how it's done right. And I think it has to do with not so much the work that we did with our staff, but I think it has to do with the leadership of you individually. Because you knew what the task ahead was, and you decided that you are not going to get boiled down in the emotion. You're going to do the right thing for the citizens of Orlando, and I'll tell you how much I appreciate that. So thank you very much.
Commissioner Diamond and then Commissioner Raines.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, I would also like to thank everybody on the committee in general, and also Angel Colon from District 1 in particular. I think you all did a very nice job. I was very glad that Angel could be on the committee, and I think it's important to note that he is from the southeast part of town, an area which is growing in population, and also, just as importantly, engaging in the civic dialogue. And I think that's so important for the new areas of town as well as the more established areas of town to do just that. And I think it's also interesting to note, and I think it's a good thing to look at where the growth is going to come, because I think, like has been said, the growth will come, I think, for the most part in the city from southeast Orlando, although there are some places around the other parts of the city that will grow, but probably not to the extent of southeast Orlando. And I wonder if the economy hadn't taken the turn that it did, what this map would look like today. I suspect it would be it'd be quite different, and I think it'll be quite different in 10 years. And in fact, I remember when I took office talking to Commissioner Ammerman, my predecessor, and he made the prediction that when it came time to redistrict in 2010 or 2012 for the 2010 census, his prediction was that it would be difficult, if not impossible, to keep my neighborhood and my house inside of District 1 because of all the growth that was anticipated in District 1. And I think it's going to be very interesting to see where things end up 10 years from now. I also, several people talked about the level of discourse, and I would agree. I mean, I think, Wayne, you did a nice job, the committee did a nice job, excuse me, of really welcoming comments. And I've been to a large number of meetings over the years, and it's really interesting to see the comfort level of people, and even people that I think weren't all that comfortable about speaking felt comfortable about speaking. And I think part of it might have been the receptivity of the folks on the committee, that even though you might have disagreed or not like certain aspects of this plan or that plan, I think you treat everybody with respect, and I think you really get a lot of credit for that, for really operating and really doing business and letting citizens know this is the way that we should do business. So thank you to all of you, and I appreciate all your involvement and hope to see all of you stay involved. Thank you.
Mr. Reddings?
Thank you, Mayor, and I'd just like to say thank you, too, to the committee, and specifically my appointee, Bishop Alan T.D. Wiggins, for all of your help and support on this issue, and, of course, our chair, Wayne Rich, and specifically the whole overall committee. And even when we attended the meetings, the public meetings, you were very open to the commissioners at least having a say or greeting the people, which was good, and it always kind of opened up the door for the people to even inquire more. So I just want to thank you for that. However, my concern is that District 6 has lost some of its minority voter support, and not only in the population but also in the territory. So obviously, Mayor, I will be submitting some amendments to this, and Mike, so let's kind of work together here, and hopefully it will be such that it would be very amenable to us all, because you guys have really worked hard. The mayoral appointees, you guys were super. You were like that other piece in there that really added to the flavor of what was being done throughout the whole process. So my hat's off to you. Thank you. You were very civil. The public was very civil in their responses to you, which was very positive. And of course, the support of the city staff was highly evident there. And the commitment was just truly great and outstanding. And even Linda Rhinesmith out there at Dr. Phillips directing traffic. I'm expecting to see her on the inside, but she's on the outside directing traffic, making sure that people knew how to get to the meeting. So again, thank you so very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. And with that, one final thanks, and we're adjourned.